Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, which is part of the ongoing EU Code Week webinar series. Before we beginning, let's wait another minute to give more people a chance to join, and then we are getting started. Okay, so I see more people joining the session. I think at this point we can start the webinar. So welcome again, everyone. I'll introduce myself. My name is Anna, and I'm a project assistant at the All Digital, and I'm delighted to be your host for today's session. But before we dive in, I'd like to give some quick notes. So this webinar is being recorded and it will be available on the EU Code Week YouTube channel. So if you prefer not to appear, feel free to keep your camera off and the microphone mute. Today's webinar is designed to be interactive, so we encourage you to participate and share your ideas, and the session will last approximately 45 minutes, and there will be the time at the end for question and answers, so feel free to note down any questions you have as we go along. Now, to put this webinar into the broader context of the EU Code Week, the idea behind this series of webinar is to create a space where we share practical insight, sparking discussion and showcasing inspiring initiative. I hear someone having the microphone mute, so I'll gently ask you to have a look if you have it and keep it off, please. What I was saying, we like in this webinar series to showcasing inspiring initiative, and today we are exploring how diversity drives innovation in a hackathon. And who better to guide us in this topic, like our fantastic speaker, Rein Meirte. Hello, Rein, and thank you so much to join today and share with us your inspiring experience.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Rain, it's great to have you with us. But before we dive into the discussion, let me briefly introduce you to our audience. So, Rain is one of the founder of Clusity, which is Belgium's largest women in tech community. And since 2022, if I don't wrong, Clusity has connected over 3,000 women and partner with more than 35 companies to promote inclusion in tech. And this is fantastic. So, and with this background in innovation management, Rein is a driving force behind Clusity's vision. And I like to share with the audience that was recently nominated Inclusive Tech Champions of Belgium 2025. So congratulations, Rein. Today, so she will share how inclusive hackathon can bring out the best ideas, empower diverse talents, and create real impact. So I think I talked a lot. Let's jump in the session, and Rain, the floor is finally yours.
Thank you. Let me just share my screen. I hope you can see it. All
Absolutely,
right.
yes.
So I'm super happy to be part of this today and super glad to see all of you here joining. Um, Today I'm going to talk about hackathons and creating diverse hackathons, inclusive hackathons, to drive better solutions for the problems you're hacking. Anna already gave a very nice intro about Clusity and about what we do. I'm going to go quickly over again with maybe some visuals, what we do and who I am. So as Anna mentioned, I'm one of the founders of Clusity. We're a community for women in tech based in Belgium, and we host events, quite a lot of events. We share role model stories. We have an ambassador program, mentorship program, and we partner up also with companies to help them embrace female talent. We do that with a lot of help, of course. So I have my co-founder who's here in the call as well, Elke Kramer. And then we have a team of ambassadors, volunteers helping us out, creating all of these programs. Um, we are now at around 3,000 women in our community. We've organized over 84 events, partnered up with or talked to at least 86 companies and shared role model stories of more than 71 women in tech. So those numbers are still rising, of course. I maybe need to update them, but just to give you an idea of our scope and size. If you're interested about this at all, you can always reach out to me or go to our website. I think the link will also be shared in the chat. And with that said, I would love to dive into this session where I will divide it in 4 parts. So I'm first going to dive into the why of things, like why is diversity and inclusion an important part of hackathons? Then about understanding barriers for minorities in technology to access the technology industry, to access also hackathons and in events and what maybe goes on that side of things. And then the actions you can take as an event organizer from both a hackathon perspective, but a lot of the things I'm going to mention and a lot of the things that I'm going to mention in the topics before can also be applied to any type of event, any type of workshop, or even you can take some inspiration for projects. And then finally, I will dive into some quick examples, some good examples, some bad examples, and then we have some time left for a Q&A. You can, during the session, also put your questions in the chat just to remember them. And if not, you can ask them at the end. So to start off, I'm going to ask you all a little question, just to get an idea of where everyone is at in this call. So who has organized or has been part of the organization of an hackathon or an event before? You can just like click on the little raise hand if you click on the three dots and then raise your hand. So I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 people already. Yeah, so 7, I think. Okay, so quite some people. You can lower your hands again. And then I'm going to ask a follow-up question. Who had a focus during this organization on diversity and inclusion? Like who had on their agenda, on their communication, some part of we need to focus on attracting more minorities or female talent or okay, I see 3 hands, 4 hands, 5 hands. Okay. So also I'd say half of the people who, or a little bit more than half of the people who have been organizing events. Then, does someone want to unmute themselves and maybe tell me why it was important to organize or focus on diversity and inclusion during the event they organized? You can just unmute and speak up if you want to. So don't be shy. You can just go ahead. And the question really is about what was the importance? Was it an incentive because of certain KPI or
I
okay?
would like to say something. We every year organize an event exclusively for girls because we see in our regular events, which we organize monthly with Coder Dojo, that there is still a lot less girls than boys. So we try with this exclusive event to have more inclusivity into our regular dojos. So that's
Right.
what we did in
All right.
the
So you
past
use
and the
it as a
future.
little boost for your regular program, actually, by focusing on one specific group so they can enter in your regular program.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
All right. Someone else who wants to say something about this, who has, yeah, Lisa, go ahead.
So I organized some hackathons with Delaware.
Mhm.
So we focused mainly on last year students, informatics students, but also other educations. And there at a certain point in time, we changed the name from a hackathon to a student game to attract more diversity to these hackathons. And the reason was it's similar as to why we want to attract more diversity in our workforce as well.
All right. And then the
Yeah.
change of the name, because hackathon is maybe linked to a more male perspective, for example, or
Yes,
yeah.
it's
Okay.
perceived as very technical.
Yeah.
Well, we wanted to make clear that also a more functional approach is necessary within a hackathon,
All
the
right.
business perspective and so on.
Okay. I think you already touched on a couple of things I'm going to mention in this presentation, so I'm very happy about that. Um, so I want to address a couple of things why I think it's important that we all focus more on D&I, and I'm very happy to hear a lot of people do. But still, there's a lot of systemic things that need to change. And of course, one hackathon or one person putting an emphasis on the diversity and inclusion won't change this. But all of us doing a little bit and bridging that gap is going to help a couple of things. So I want to mention a couple of numbers as to why. We see now that only 1% of R&D budget is focused on women, while they make around 80% of buying decisions. A lot of hackathons have the incentive to create solutions for companies or to create new startups or to create new ideas to build innovations, to build new products, to go to the market in a different way, in the end, to do more business or to solve a problem. And and a lot of R&D budget goes to solving those problems as well. and we see a big untapped market into female-specific solutions. And this is a number from a research that is quoted from the book Evolution, which I will mention at the end, that one of our community members also recently published. So I'm very happy to share it. And I'm mentioning this because this is for women, and I'm going to talk a lot about women as I'm founder of a community for women in tech. But a lot of the things I'm going to mention are in even a worse state or can be applied to other minorities in technology, where in technology women are a minority. Within, I think, worldwide, around a quarter of people in tech are a minority. In my country, in Belgium, we're at around 20% of women in technology. So, but for when we talk about ageism, about things like neurodiversity, or about people with like different cultural backgrounds or skin colors, or all of those things, a lot of the same systemic things apply. And later on, we will also see how some of those things, to create a more inclusive environment, apply to all minorities or all people who are usually in an out group in technology. Then next we have worldwide 20% of women participants in hackathons. This is an estimate by LinkedIn. They did a large scale research on it. So that's not a lot. And then in the EU, only 11% of VC, of venture capital, goes to women-led startups. A lot of those startups coming out of incubator programs, out of hackathons, out of ideation programs, and only 18% of investors is a woman. I get a feeling I don't need to convince anyone in this call about the importance of diversity and inclusion, but here you have maybe some more reasons as to why it's important to focus. I'm going to go into three little things as to why the DEI is important in the hackathons. And first off, it's about building a strong foundation. When we look at hackathons, at events, at workshops, at ideation sessions, where opportunities come out for people to maybe create their own business, or maybe get hired, or put it on their CV, a lot of those ideas, the people who thought of those ideas, the creators, have somehow still a role to play into building them. This creates a good base for a diverse team, actually, when the idea comes from a diverse group, and when it's built upon in a solid way. And if you look at startups that have grown out of hackathons or ideation sessions or incubator programs, you see that with all male or homogeneous teams, it's very hard when they start to grow to attract people who are different to themselves. So you get kind of the right part of the screen. So you get kind of this growth when in the beginning phase of building an idea, everything is about, okay, how are we going to make this work? Make sure there's a demand on the market, build our business, and you're not thinking too much about your team and the foundation of the culture of your company, because you're already happy if you can sell your newly thought of product. And then you have to fix it later, because if it goes off the ground, at some point in time, it will become an issue. And it's very hard to fix that foundation. So from the start, building this strong, resilient team, and it's really from the start, from like the moment the idea arises, to put an emphasis on it. There's also an importance of having everyone on board. I think something you might have heard of before is that solutions for a diverse society, for a society that consists out of a lot of different types of people, are better made by representation of that society. If the creators, the people designing the idea or the product or the service, are a reflection of their users, you're going to be better in touch with their needs. of course, because you have the same needs. You can reflect out of your own world of thinking, and that's something that's said quite a lot. But I also want to show some cases where, for example, it did go wrong a little bit. I don't know if anyone has worn VR glasses, like the basic Meta models, like the one or two by Meta. They are built by a male design team, and they're have been reports of women saying they can't wear it for over 30 minutes to an hour because it's so uncomfortable. And if you look at the design of the standard Meta VR glasses, they are built for male heads. While female heads are 3% smaller on average, and also they're made for Caucasian heads, while Asian and African heads have different have a different shape to them. And not to talk about people who wear glasses and the VR glasses, and how do you cope with accessibility to seeing things and focusing it. They built, like, I think they're building now, or they have built already, like a technology way to fix the focus for your face. But just to show, like, that if there was a woman or an Asian or an African person on the design team, and they would have tried out the glasses, they would probably have said, this is uncomfortable. Maybe we can change this, or maybe we can change that. So that's just one example. We have the face recognition that first got launched by IBM, Google, Microsoft. They now fixed it, but until 2018, the error margin for white people was 1%, and for black people, it was 35%. Also something to be said about who is building those applications and where the data is coming from. And then there's also maybe a little bit a more known example from the Apple Health app. Forgetting about, they had everything that you can track about health, but they didn't include period tracking or the Fitbit. Forgetting about maybe a change in calorie intake for pregnant women, because women getting pregnant, according to the Fitbit, they were getting overweight and they should eat less calories and sport more. So there's like these little errors that sneak into solutions when they're not built by diverse teams. And there's still also, and that's still the case, Siri, Alexa, and Google Assistant having a higher error ratio for recognizing higher pitched voices, which are usually female voices. And then there's also the better business part. I think there's a lot of research on why diverse teams perform better. I think a lot of this will be proven again now with the news, the actuality of companies laying off or changing their focus of their DEI programs will really get maybe the proof of if it gives them like a competitive disadvantage of not investing in diversity anymore. But there's a lot of research that has proven that these diverse teams perform better, lead to better profits, better success, more innovation. That to be said, diving into the next part, it's not about just mushing a bunch of people who are different to each other together and they will like outperform everyone. That's not how it works. There are quite a lot of barriers to this. And there's barriers on the side of you organizing maybe a hackathon or an event. There's also a barrier for this diverse talent, for them to tap into that market, for them to come and register for a hackathon. And I love the example that Lisa gave before about the changing the name of hackathon, because already that is maybe a little bit a biased name by now because of how hackathons have looked like maybe until now. I'm going to dive quickly into 3 barriers of diverse talent. First one being understanding bias. Then we have the lower confidence or the confidence gap for minority groups, and then we have belonging. So of course, when when we approach the world, we wear our own glasses of our view and our life experiences. So does everyone else. That's also translates into our own biases through our experience. We assume things, we make quick connections to act upon, like, okay, this type of person behaves like that, so when I see another person who looks like that, they will probably behave the same way. Like those type of links you lay that aren't always correct, but help you with quick thinking and quick judgment. There's one bias, there's hundreds of biases, but there's one bias that I would love to highlight for this, which is the performance bias, or the prove it again bias, which is also a very well researched type of bias, where women, and we can extend that to minorities, have to accomplish more to prove that they're as competent as men or as the majority, leading to being judged more often on past accomplishments, while the majority group, or in this case men, are often judged upon their potential in the future. There's like a couple of quotes here from research that you can read more into if you're interested. But knowing that, and knowing that if you are, for example, used to having to prove yourself and prove yourself, and you apply for a hackathon, you can also fall into the confidence gap, which is my next topic. So there is the research as well, that women tend to be less confident in their performance and ability, and that has been linked to the, for example, the prove it again bias, but also to the way women tend to get less affirmation of competence. So they hear less often like, oh, you're amazing, you're good at this, you're smart. And also the emotional effects of criticism, when you are already in a lower confidence, or when you already feel like you have to prove all the time, and then you get criticism, it comes in harder. So that's also something to take into account, and it has been also very well studied. I put the number of households, so 35,000 households have been studied for this, so it's quite a solid group. So that's just something, when you have a hackathon and you're focusing, for example, on attracting more female talent, be aware of that they might have this confidence gap, and often they might be as competent as men, but they won't be shouting like, I'm gonna do this, I have enough experience, I have the knowledge. Sometimes it's a little push, like, you got this, you don't need to know everything, you can join even without the technical skills, or without knowing all of the coding languages that exist in the world. And then finally, I have belonging here. So being part of an in-group is kind of the translation of belonging. When you have groups, you might recognize this from your own life experience. You often have a common, like, a thing in common with a couple of people. So when we look at technology teams, it's often a lot of men and only a couple of women. And then you get an in-group of people who bond over their things they have in common. And then there's an out-group, people who don't belong to that. Can be that they are involved in a lot of the activities and they don't get like actively excluded or discriminated, but there's a sense of not belonging, of being part of this out group. And when you are used to being a minority, you assume you're going to be in the out group. So when you approach a hackathon and all you've seen is hackathons with a lot of people who are different to you, and you see another hackathon, again, the bias, you maybe assume you will be also part of the out group. Taking this into account, you as an organizer can create a space where those people can feel like they're part of the in group. And the way you can do that is what I'm going to dive into next, is by the way you set up your event or your hackathon. And there's some things to do before, some things to do during the event or the hackathon, and some things to do after. I quickly listed them here. So in the before, we have things like role models, channels, and branding. And a couple of questions you can ask yourself is, who are you showing? Who is in your visuals? Are you showing faces of people? That's a good thing, creates connections. But if those faces are like here on the bottom left, we have an example of the Vlaamse programmeerwedstrijd. If this is an image you're using for promotion, people are going to assume some things about your hackathon, being this is your target group. It's young men, young white students. And then you have the branding also with a lot of blue. I think I've got an something against linking IT to blue, as blue is often also considered a very gendered color, and a lot of hackathons use blue as their main color. And that's also in your branding and the vibe you're giving off, and what people connect to colors, to branding, to shapes, to aesthetics. And I have here two other examples that I think are better examples, where it's yellow and black, which is, I think, a very neutral way to showing. And then this one, it dips over to the other side. This one, you have three women, you can see. It's a nurse hack for health. And we see a lot of round shapes, soft colors, gradients, purples, more like female type of aesthetic. So I would assume there's not going to be a lot of men on that hackathon, which is also not what you want, because diversity is when you bring everyone together. It's not tipping it to the other side. And also stereotypically linking nursing, nurse and health to women also plays into those stereotypes. So then there's the channels you're communicating. Where is your reach? If you make a very neutral, like the one in the middle, type of branding, but you're only promoting it in your Facebook group that is 90% men, again, you're not going to reach those women. So think about which channels you're using and what type of people are on those channels. And then often using schools, for example, high schools or colleges, universities could be a good one. But if you are promoting to teachers and asking them to share about your event, also pay attention in what careers are they teaching, what kind of biases do they have, and can you emphasize, like, also promote it there and also promote it to female students. Then there's also the messaging. What motivation are you giving them to sign up? Did you put a focus on impact and social and the environmental, for example, which is often topics that attract a lot of people? Or is it like boost yourself, or hone into your creativity to make us better? That's our messages that often attract a more male audience. So those type of messages and coloring and all of the promotion, the channels, is very important. If you don't do this part, it's going to be very hard to get people registering from your non-typical groups. And then a final point I added here is also spontaneous communication about accessibility, and you can be explicit about this. And what I mean by spontaneous is a lot of events, a lot of organizers, they might have a wheelchair accessible building, but you don't put it on your website or something, because if there's something who is in a wheelchair or broke their leg or something, they will ask. And just that little step of they will ask, and they have to put in the effort to ask me if they can attend due to this or that, is already going to create a bit of a non-inclusive feeling. You already get the feeling like, okay, if I have to ask, if I have to put in this effort, there's not going to be a lot of people like me. There's not going to be a lot of people who, I don't know, have a need for an adapted toilet. Or same thing for if you're hosting a hackathon during the Ramadan, and you put food at, I don't know, 6 o'clock, and if the sun hasn't come down at 6 o'clock, like, don't wait for people to come to you. Just put it in, like, people on the Ramadan can eat later, for example. Just put it there. And those things, of course, you you learn from also organizing your event with a diverse team and having people who have those same needs in your organizing team. And that's also, of course, super important. During the event, you have, of course, to match that image that you gave off during the first phase, during your promotion, because if people sign up on an event that looks super inclusive and they arrive and it is not at all, they're going to be a bit disappointed. So does it match? Do you have the food options, the toilets, the comfort? Do you have maybe a moment for the participants to connect so they can get to know each other? Do you have the experts and the jury in the room also being their like role models and a representation? And I put here some images of a hackathon by a country's military, where they really, really put in effort to make their branding very female friendly, as to say. But the hackathon itself took place in one of their training rooms, and it was with a sleepover, and everyone had to sleep on the floor. But they had like toilets outside, just like your plastic festival type of toilets, and there were no bins in the toilets, so everything was mixed. Men and women were mixed, and no bins in the toilet. So women who were menstruating, for example, didn't know how to cope. The organization team, all men, they didn't know, they didn't think about it, and it was just like a very, very negative experience for the few women who participated in the end. But just to say, like, you kind of have to match that vibe. Like, you can't do the first part and let it be done by a marketing agency, for example, and then go on and organize your event for a very one-sided group. And then after, who's your jury? And if your jury is not a diverse group, how are they going to make sure that in your hackathon, the people being judged, assuming that there's like a judgment at the end, like people presenting their ideas after the hackathon and being judged by a jury, how are you going to make sure that that jury can judge everyone in an equal way? That's also something to think about. And the experts also walking around, their role models for the people participating in the hackathon or event. And if you apply this to regular events, it's about the speakers, it's about the organizers, it's about people talking about your event online. So yeah. And then just finally, for this part of this session, sometimes it's really simple and very small behaviors that create a feeling of inclusion. And it can be things, and this is also, I added the reference there. This is also very well studied, that it's not all about making everything over inclusive and going for this hyper inclusive environment. It's also about greeting people, about eye contact, about inviting them in and asking questions. That's how you behave inclusively as a person towards others, being aware to also do that for people who are different than yourself. And also briefing your team that walks around there, the other speakers, the jury, and everyone, to also be aware of these behaviors. It's about defending people, it's about endorsing them, about connecting them, about affirming. So don't forget, like, in all of this diversity and inclusion talk, like, this is the basis, and it's about human behavior towards someone else that makes them feel like they belong, and that's why they want to be there and help and create solutions and participate. So just to keep the focus on what's actually matters. Then for the final part, and I think I'm still good with my timing, I brought some examples, and I want to ask you in the first place, maybe my first example is super obvious. What could be done better here? So you can just unmute yourself, or you can write in the chat if you don't feel like talking.
I can jump in and I can say that it's quite obviously that we just see men in these two pictures, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So exactly, we see like represented a lot of men, a lot of younger men as well, except for the I assume the expert who is a little bit older. Uh, I think also like the messaging, like your creativity for an improved European security infrastructure is not very much focused on like the benefits for society. Like, I mean, a security infrastructure, I think that's also maybe not so attractive for everyone. We see a lot of blue, a lot of dark colors as well. So I think a lot of the typical things. This is a hackathon that has been done in the past, and by no surprise, there were 0 female participants. And all of the other branding looked quite similar to this. So that's one. Then I have here just a little case from Nordic Health Hackathons with Edda, and I'm not going to try to pronounce the last name, sorry, who's the founder of the Iceland Innovation Week. If you are super interested in her case, I would also highly recommend to just get her on LinkedIn and link and send her a message. But she has organized quite a few hackathons, focusing very much also on gender, and also talking about the effect that focusing on gender and inclusion has on other minorities joining the hackathon. And she touches on a couple of things that I think I've mentioned or very well, or tie in very well into what I've said before. So things like showing role models being super important and sharing best practices to make it more appealing to the female participants. Um, and also the focus on the societal challenges. So the builders creating the solutions for societal challenges, mirroring the users of the actual solutions, creating better outcome for the hackathon itself. So I think she's a very inspirational one, and Nordic health hackathons are very interesting, maybe to take a look at, take a peek at for some good examples. And then a couple of maybe fun examples also of outcomes of these type of hackathons. So I first here have Vilt, which is the first seaweed-based tampon, which the first idea, like they got into investment rounds and they're very, very well on their way to becoming a big company now. But their first idea came also in an ideation session in an accelerator program to create solutions with seaweed was the incentive. So the incentive was not about female health or care at all. And I would argue that not a lot of the groups that would be in such a hackathon thinking about uses for seaweed or sea-based products would come up with a tampon as a solution, as like one of the outcomes, if there wouldn't be like a woman in the team. So that's just an example. Then we have here the first female football shoe ever, only launched in 2023. So until now, professional football shoes have been optimized very well with a lot of data based on professional football players in the higher leagues, which were primarily men. So women having wider hips and having a different rotation as they're smaller, it's different. And until now, a lot of women were wearing those men-based professional football shoes in professional female football. So Girls United and Ida did a session together, and they came out to this new shoe. Then there's another one from your choice, creating birth control for men. And then, because I bashed already a little bit on the military and on the EU defense hackathons, there's also some good outcome. They also did another hackathon another time with better branding, I would say, from what I could see. And we have one of the winners there, Priyanka, who created a system for better, like from a technology based system for snipers to have higher accuracy, to have less collateral damage. And she's now also doing very well. Someone really to also follow if you're interested in that. And we have here also a very beautiful example of MUM, the trucks that really stole their name, that created a workshop series for to get the perspective of female drivers, also to involve them in their product development of new trucks, to also take into account, as I think in the logistics world, they have come to a point where they need so many drivers that they need to also involve women, and out of that need, it needs to be more attractive also for women to become truck drivers. And I think this is a beautiful example of how also a company from an industry that's very male dominated can twist that. And then finally, I have this use case by Spotify that I linked, that I highly recommend reading, because they really they put in a lot of effort, and they wrote an entire case on an 50-50 male and female technical hackathon that they tried to organize, and they measured everything they did, and they have conclusions on their website, and it's very interesting. But I put a couple of the conclusions here of what they did and what they concluded. So we have the clever marketing playing an important role, the fun and friendly, especially messaging, like the friendliness and the warmness coming out of the messaging to attract more female participants. For the same for coloring and branding, like no Barbie nor ninja, no blue and fighting and that type of coloring, but also no Barbie. It doesn't have to all be pink and glittery either. Also for the channels, again, they used to promote a lot of their hackathons in their Facebook tech group, which is quite large. And for this one, they decided not even to post it there, and they went to universities and really also tried to speak upon their community, to invite their sisters, nieces, daughters, partners. They went to community centers as well, and also through their messaging could attract a lot of women who were not at all in tech to participate in this technical hackathon, which was very cool to see how they did that. They also put a big emphasis on the atmosphere and the ambience in the on the event itself. So they first did a networking session with a fun game, an icebreaker for everyone to get to know each other, to build those social relationships, to actually build friendships out of the groups coming together. But something they noted was very important. Well, it's, of course, Spotify is the music. Of course, they had to make a conclusion about that, but the music and the ambience being also adapted to their audience. And they took out the competitive part of their hackathon, which I find very interesting. So there were no prizes and no pitches at the end. There was only demos. So taking off the pressure of having to pitch your event and be judged in front of an entire group by a jury, and then a winner coming up to stage, just taking that entirely out and just having everyone present. So they did have to come on stage, but in the format of just give a demo of where you're at. And maybe good to add, like there were actually prizes, but they gave them afterwards, after the event. So it wasn't like this big on stage, like you win and you lose. So the winners did get like some ongoing funding to actually build their projects and make them larger, just not like right on the spot. And one of the side effects they also noticed, that I also mentioned before, is they focused very much on getting 50-50 men, women. But they saw a big rise in participants with a migration background, in neurodivergent participants, and participants from gender minorities, being trans, intersex, queer, non-binary. So their conclusion from this is also like, if you create an inclusive environment, it's inclusive. So it means for like everyone can feel a feeling of belonging because they're appreciated for their uniqueness. So that's also maybe something nice to add. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. And with that note, I want to finish off. I have like a little bookshelf here for if you're interested in reading more on these topics. Evolution is coming out in English in a couple of months. Now it's only in Dutch still, but this one I mentioned before. We have the Inclusion Marathon, which I highly recommend, or The Loudest Duck, also an interesting book. And if you have any more questions, I would say you can ask them now, or if you want to ask them afterwards, you can always connect to either me or Elke, the other founder of Clusity, on LinkedIn or through email. We're always happy to talk about anything tech, diversity, inclusion related. So thank you.
Wow, Rain, so many nice examples and great stories that you share with us. So I don't actually know what to add more. I can just stand that it's clear that fostering diversity and inclusion is the real key to driving the innovation. So you touch so many topics that are extremely important, especially for organizer of events such as hackathons. So thank you very much for sharing such an inspirational vision of yours and of Clusity. And thank you for the impact that your organization is having with the tech community and, of course, on the inclusion point of view, but also in a diversity point of view. So I think now it's the timing for our audience to share their thoughts. So let's see if something is happening in our chat. And you can also feel free to unmute yourself and ask directly any question you have in your mind that you know during these incredible sessions to ask to Rein straight. And in the meantime, really, thank you again, Rein. I was so much inspired from your valuable insight, and I have to say that I'm the one that is organizing hackathon soon, so I will take inspiration from this session.
Thank you.
So we have one hands raised. So great, go ahead.
Yeah, I mentioned it before that we do girls exclusive events just to lower the barrier and give the girls a bit more confidence. Like when they come and they experience that they're actually better than they thought they were, that they will bring them to our regular coding sessions we have during the year. What is your opinion about this? Is it a good way to work? Would it be a good way to make hackathons also more accessible for girls than having it?
I love that question because I know the hackathon you're talking about, the Coderdojo for Girls. And I think like in your case, because your audience is quite young, these are middle school kids, I think, right?
Yeah, middle school and primary school.
And primary school, yeah.
Mostly, yeah.
So I think you're talking about an audience that's also not mature and is very much still in their little gender group. Like in and out groups are also very gender based, usually at that age, like girls having girlfriend, like female friends, and and the boys having boyfriends, and of course they can mix, but in a lot of cases they like they have girly things and there's boysy things. So I think it's quite good that you're doing that, but it's not exactly an inclusive hackathon, of course, if you're focusing a lot on girls. And I understand from the regular program attracting so little women or so little girls that focusing on them, it's necessary to get them to get the confidence to get into the regular programs. And I think it's just super important that then in the regular program and the other hackathons you're organizing that are not just focused on girls, that those are inclusive, that they also have this glasses of, okay, it's not that we have do one thing for girls specifically, so we do the rest just like whatever, or with the typical slogans, the typical visuals. So I think just like keeping that balance, but sometimes you do need that push. And I found it together with Elke a community for women in tech that's also like focusing on women. But we always say like everyone who is a fan of more women in tech is welcome. So we also do have men participating, but the majority are women. And we do find that necessary to create this little space of belonging, a little safe space, so then they can venture out into their tech companies where they're active and they can feel like they're supported by this group. So it's, of course, then we're not talking about like super inclusive spaces, but we're talking about like building a good base to approach more minorities to enter a certain field, to then have them spread out and then create those inclusive spaces elsewhere. So I think that's kind of what I think about that.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
I think we have a
Thank
question
you,
from
Rein. Yes,
Mira.
exactly. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
hello.
Hi.
And thank you for such inspiring speech. It was really helpful and great. I would like to ask you a question. As a last year student in tech, of course, I noticed some problems. I would say like problems women has and struggle with, like imposter feeling in a male prioritized field. How would you handle that? How would you inspire girls to, push your limits?
Yeah, I think thank you for your question. I think that's a very big topic, and yeah, it's you can often call it imposter syndrome, like feeling you are not good enough to be doing what you're doing, or to get the praise or the positions that you're getting, to feel like you never know enough. But this really ties into the confidence gap, which is something I mentioned before, like the when you're part of a minority and you get a lot more like criticism or generalization over like who you are because of people not knowing many people who are similar to you, that lowers your confidence, and that's very like normal, and it's very human as well. I think it's not only a women's thing, it's more of a minority thing, like being a woman in also technology, you are usually in the minority. And how I would tackle this, because I think we get a lot of people in our community who struggle with this issue as well, and they really like get a little push of confidence and a little like reaffirmation of you are good enough and it's fine. And I think you can get that through connecting with peers. One part is being aware that it's not that you're not good enough, and it's not that you lack confidence. It's you are a minority in a certain group, and that affects your feeling of competence. So just to be like the awareness of that, and I think you are already at that stage just by asking this question or seeing it in other women, like just being aware that this is a thing and that it's not you, and a lot of people struggle with that, and then trying to find people who are similar to yourself and connecting with them can really help. So going to communities, going to places, talking to, just find on LinkedIn people who do a similar job or seem to be in a field that you want to be in, and ask them to maybe have a coffee and talk to them about this. And people are super open because a lot of women in tech experience this. So I think like that, just like the awareness, and you can also, if you see it in other students, you can also help them become aware. You can talk about like, hey, have you heard about this confidence gap thing? Like it's maybe not, it's not you, maybe it's the system, and it could help you or benefit you to reach out to a community. So I think that's a really important thing, because I also see and notice people who do connect and who do get that support and who do find people who are similar or at a similar skill level supporting each other, that they get over this feeling, so that it's not like a permanent thing that you will have to dread and carry around forever. Like if you get the right support and the right people in your back and you get the little push to go ahead and jump, that you do get over it. So
Right. Thank you so much.
no problem. Thank you for your question.
Great. And as we are running out of our time, we used the whole hours and we had such an inspiring open discussion at the end. So, and this brings us at the end of today's session. And of course, if you'd like to know more, stay connected with the Clusity activities and events through the website that is shared in the chat. And another huge thank you to Rein for her time and expertise. And of course, also to all of you for joining and engaging in this great discussion that we have together.
And
of
thank
course,
you, Anna and Dea,
yeah,
for organizing the session as well.
with pleasure. So I would like to invite everyone to stay connected with Code Week for more upcoming webinars. And actually, the next one is going to be next week on the 18th. And we are going to talk about the thinking in the future and activating students towards innovation. So it's going to be perfect and great experience to session to connect with this experience that we have just today. And so I think it's time to close, and thank you again, and we look forward to see you at the future events. And at this point, have a great rest of the day, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you very much. Bye bye.